In the cold logic of geopolitics, there are no moral victories, only the brutal reality of the map and the uncompromising math of the kill chain. For decades, the world has viewed the border between Israel and Lebanon through the lens of a frozen conflict, a fragile status quo held together by the ghost of past wars, but that era of relative stability is dead. What we are witnessing now is not a series of skirmishes, it is a systematic, calculated biding of time. Hezbollah is not just firing missiles and launching drones. They are conducting a masterclass in strategic attrition, peeling back the layers of Israeli deterrence, one layer at a time. The question is no longer if a full-scale invasion will happen. The question is whether Israel can survive the logistical and geographical nightmare that awaits them in the terrain they call the Green Hell. To understand the stakes, you must look past the headlines and stare directly at the topography. South Lebanon is a fortress built by nature and reinforced by Iranian engineering. It is a labyrinth of limestone ridges, deep wadis, and dense Mediterranean scrub. Unlike the flat urban density of Gaza, South Lebanon offers what military strategists call high ground advantage and strategic depth. Hezbollah has spent 18 years turning every hill into a launch pad and every valley into a kill zone. They do not operate like a traditional army that can be decapitated. They operate as a decentralized, hyper-networked insurgency with the firepower of a mid-sized nation-state. This is the reality that the Israel Defense Forces face as they mass their divisions along the blue line. The logic of escalation is now driven by a fundamental shift in the balance of power. For 70 years, Israel's security doctrine rested on the principle of taking the fight to enemy territory and ending it quickly. But speed is a luxury that the terrain of Lebanon does not permit. Every kilometer gained by an Israeli tank is a kilometer that must be supplied through narrow, winding roads vulnerable to ambush. Hezbollah's weapon of choice is not the tank or the jet. It is the Kornet-EM anti-tank guided missile and the low-profile suicide drone. These are the tools of the asymmetric predator. They allow a defender hidden in a mountain cave to neutralize a multi-million-dollar main battle tank from 5 kilometers away. This is not just warfare. It is the democratization of lethality, and it is tilted heavily in favor of the defender. As the rockets continue to rain down on the Galilee, the political pressure inside Jerusalem is reaching a boiling point. Over 80,000 Israeli citizens are displaced, turned into refugees in their own country. For a state that prides itself on being the ultimate guarantor of Jewish security, this is an existential humiliation. The political survival of the current cabinet is now tied to a singular objective, pushing Hezbollah north of the Litani River. But in the world of hard realism, political necessity often crashes into military impossibility. To clear the Litani, Israel would need to execute the largest ground operation since 1982. They would be walking into a trap that has been meticulously prepared for nearly 2 decades. Consider the initial moves of such a campaign. The IDF would likely lead with a massive air campaign attempting to blind Hezbollah's ISR capabilities and destroy their long-range precision missile sites. But air power has diminishing returns in a mountainous environment. Most of Hezbollah's high-value assets are buried hundreds of feet below the surface in hardened silos carved into the bedrock. When the ground forces finally cross the border, the friction begins. The elite Radwan force, battle-hardened from a decade of combat in Syria, will not retreat. They will bleed the IDF and the border villages using a stay-behind tactic that forces the Israeli rear guard to fight for every inch of territory they thought they had already cleared. The reaction from the regional actors will be immediate and cold. Iran does not view Hezbollah as a mere proxy. Hezbollah is Iran's strategic insurance policy. It is the forward-deployed deterrent that keeps Israel and the United States from striking Tehran's nuclear infrastructure. If Hezbollah's core survival is threatened, Iran will not hesitate to activate the rest of its ring of fire. We would see a simultaneous surge in ballistic missile attacks from the Houthis in Yemen, Shia militias in Iraq, and the remnants of the Syrian Arab Army. The goal would not be to defeat Israel in a single battle, but to saturate their multi-layered air defense systems until the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and the Arrow are all empty. This brings us to the point of escalation that few want to discuss: the collapse of the logistical tail. Modern war consumes munitions at a rate that would bankrupt most industrial bases. Israel's depth is limited. Its economy is built on high-tech integration and global trade, both of which are paralyzed by a long-term, high-intensity conflict. Hezbollah, conversely, is fed by a land bridge that stretches from Tehran through Baghdad and Damascus to Beirut. Unless Israel can cut that entire logistical artery, a task that would require a regional war of staggering proportions, Hezbollah will always have more missiles than Israel has interceptors. This is the grim math of the war of attrition. As the conflict deepens, the strategic turning point will likely occur in the shadows of the cyber and electronic warfare domains. Israel has long held the edge in technology, but the gap is closing. Hezbollah's use of fiber optic communication networks, which are immune to electronic jamming, allows them to maintain command and control even under the heaviest bombardment. If they can successfully blind Israeli drones or spoof their GPS-guided munitions, the IDF's technological superiority is neutralized. The war then reverts to its most primal form, infantry against infantry in the dark, where the defender who knows the caves and the ridges has the final word. The regional consequences of a sustained Israeli quagmire in Lebanon would be catastrophic for Western influence. A weakened IDF bogged down in a multi-year insurgency would signal the end of the American-led security architecture in the Middle East. It would embolden rivals like Russia and China to accelerate their footprint in the region, offering stability where the old powers brought only endless war. For the Arab states that signed the Abraham Accords, a perceived Israeli military failure would force a rapid pivot back toward Tehran. Hard power is the only currency that matters in the Levant, and if Israel's sword is blunted in the mountains of the north, its diplomatic leverage will vanish overnight. We must also look at the internal endurance of the Israeli state. A mobilized reserve force of hundreds of thousands cannot stay in the field indefinitely without the national economy collapsing. Israel is a small country with zero strategic depth. Hezbollah knows this. Their strategy is not to seize Tel Aviv, but to make life in Israel unbearable. By maintaining a constant, low-level threat of drone and missile strikes, they can keep the Israeli stock market in freefall and the population in bomb shelters. It is a psychological siege designed to force a strategic retreat without ever fighting a decisive battle. What happens when the red lines are finally crossed? History tells us that in Lebanon, the entrance is always easier than the exit. In 1982, Israel entered to expel the PLO and stayed for 18 years. In 2006, a 34-day war ended in a stalemate that allowed Hezbollah to grow 10 times stronger. The logic of hard realism suggests that a third Lebanon war would not be a sequel, but a total reimagining of regional conflict. It would be a war where the lines between state and non-state actors blur, where high-tech sensors are defeated by low-tech camouflage, and where the map is redrawn in the blood of those who underestimated the power of geography. The final consideration must be the role of the global superpowers. In a world of great power competition, Lebanon is not an island. It is a square on a global chessboard. Every Israeli missile used in Lebanon is one less available for the Mediterranean theater. Every Iranian drone tested against the Iron Dome provides data to Moscow and Beijing on how to defeat Western-aligned defense systems. The war in the Green Hell would be a laboratory for the next generation of global conflict, a place where the limits of 21st century power are tested and found wanting. The conclusion is as cold as the steel of a Merkava tank. Israel is facing an opponent that has spent decades preparing for exactly the move the IDF is now considering. Hezbollah is not hiding from the war. They are inviting it. They have turned the geography of Nam Lebanon into a weapon, a green hell designed to swallow divisions and incinerate reputations. For Israel, the choice is between a humiliating status quo or a catastrophic escalation. There is no middle ground. There is no clean victory. In the end, power is not just the ability to strike. It is the ability to endure. Hezbollah has built an entire society around the endurance of conflict. They are prepared to see Lebanon burn if it means the end of Israeli hegemony. Israel must now decide if it is willing to pay the price of a generation to secure a border that may never truly be safe. The map does not lie, and the map says that the mountains of the north are a graveyard for empires. As the drones continue to buzz over the Galilee and the missiles find their marks, the world watches the clock. But in the tunnels beneath the Litani, time is not a luxury, it is a weapon. The trap is set. The logistics are in place. The logic of escalation is moving with the inevitability of a landslide. When the bulls of the north finally clash, the shockwaves will be felt far beyond the Levant. This is the reality of the new Middle East, a place where the old rules of deterrence are dead and the new rules are being written in the fire of the green hell. The war of the future is not on the horizon, it is here. It is fought with cheap drones and expensive blood. It is a war where the strong are made weak by the weight of their own technology, and the weak are made strong by the hardness of their land. Watch the ridges. Watch the supply lines, and most importantly, watch the map. Because in the end, geography is the only commander that never loses a battle. The green hell is waiting, and it has a long memory. The next chapter of the Middle East will not be written in a treaty. It will be carved into the limestone of South Lebanon, and the world will be forced to live with the consequences of what remains when the smoke finally clears.